Some stories begin in the most ordinary moments, yet end up revealing the deepest truths about people. That is exactly what happened one busy afternoon inside a crowded bank branch. Among the noise of long lines and frustrated voices, an elderly woman quietly held an envelope that would change everything. Before we continue, please like this video and subscribe. Your support helps us share more inspiring stories of dignity, courage, and hope. The bank was unusually busy that day. Customers sighed impatiently, checking their watches. Employees rushed between desks, trying to manage the endless complaints. The air felt heavy with tension. In the middle of this chaos, Maggie Thompson, a fragile elderly woman with tired eyes, stood quietly in line. She clutched a worn envelope with both hands, her fingers trembling slightly. Inside were papers she hoped would answer a question that had troubled her for weeks. To anyone watching, Maggie might have looked like just another customer. But for her, this was not a small matter. This was survival. She whispered softly to herself, "I hope they can help me today. I really can't afford another mistake." When her turn came, Maggie walked slowly to the counter. She adjusted her old coat, trying to appear confident, though her unease was written clearly on her face. At the counter sat Brittany Parker, a young bank teller with tired eyes and a distracted expression. She barely looked up as she typed on her computer. "Good afternoon, ma'am. How can I help you?" she asked flatly. Maggie took a deep breath and placed the envelope on the counter. I'm here because my account shows charges that I don't understand. I brought all my papers. Could you please explain them to me?" Brittany sighed, flipping through the documents without much interest. Her tone was mechanical, cold. "These are standard charges, ma'am. They're all listed in your account agreement." She pushed the envelope back across the counter as if it meant nothing. Maggie's voice trembled. "But I was never told about these fees. I can't afford them. This must be a mistake." Brittany rolled her eyes, loud enough for customers nearby to notice. A few heads turned toward the counter. "Ma'am, maybe you don't understand how banks work. These fees are automatic. There's nothing I can do." Maggie felt her chest tighten. It wasn't only the money. It was the way Brittany's words cut into her dignity. She whispered, almost to herself, "I just want what's fair." Brittany smirked slightly, her voice dripping with impatience. "Fair? If you want to avoid fees, you need to keep more money in your account. That's the rule." Maggie felt heat rise to her cheeks. Around her, people whispered. Their eyes on her felt heavy, judging. She wanted to disappear, but she needed answers. Gathering her courage, Maggie said, "Please, I only need someone to check this properly. It doesn't feel right." At that moment, Todd Murphy, the branch manager, walked over. His presence made Brittany sit straighter, as if suddenly more professional. Todd's voice was firm, his tone sharp. "Is there a problem here?" Brittany answered quickly, "No, sir. Just a customer struggling to understand our policies." Maggie tried to interject. "That's not true. I believe there's a mistake in my account. I only want it checked." But Todd raised his hand, silencing her. "Ma'am, everything is clear if you read the contract. What's in the system is correct. We don't waste time reviewing automatic charges." The words hit Maggie like a stone. She stood there, humiliated, fighting tears that threatened to fall. And then, something unexpected happened. From across the room, a calm, steady voice cut through the tense silence. "Why are you speaking to her like that?" The entire bank froze. Every pair of eyes turned toward the man who had spoken. He wore a casual jacket and a baseball cap. At first glance, he seemed like an ordinary customer. But as he stepped forward and removed his cap, a wave of whispers spread through the room. It was Keanu Reeves. The bank was silent. People who moments earlier were whispering now stood frozen. The man who had just spoken carried himself with calm strength. It was Keanu Reeves. Maggie stared in disbelief. She had only seen him in movies, never imagined he would stand in front of her in real life, let alone defend her. Todd Murphy, the branch manager, shifted uncomfortably. He didn't like being challenged. "And who are you to question how we run this bank?" he asked, his arms crossed. Keanu stepped closer, removing his cap. His eyes were steady, his voice low but firm. "It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is why you are treating this lady without respect. A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. Brittany Parker, the teller, glanced nervously at Todd, suddenly unsure of herself. Maggie's lips trembled. She whispered softly, I only wanted them to check my account. Keanu turned to her with a reassuring smile. Don't worry, ma'am. We're going to get this sorted out. Then he looked back at Todd, holding the envelope gently but firmly. These charges, let me see them. Maggie hesitated but handed the envelope to him. Keanu carefully examined the papers. His brow furrowed as he scanned the numbers. After a few quiet seconds, he raised his head. This is wrong. These fees don't belong here. Todd laughed nervously, trying to regain control. Mr. Reeves, with all due respect, this is none of your business. Our system is accurate. If she has fees, then she owes them. Keanu's calm gaze didn't waver. Your system is only as fair as the people who run it. And from what I see, you're using it to humiliate someone who trusted you. The tension in the room thickened. Brittany tried to speak, her voice shaky. Sir, we follow strict guidelines. These fees, they're automatic. We can't change them. Keanu raised a hand gently, cutting her off without anger but with firm authority. Automatic? Or arbitrary? There's a difference, and you both know it. The customers who had once avoided Maggie's gaze were now leaning closer, listening intently. They could feel the weight of what was unfolding. Keanu's voice softened as he turned again to Maggie. You've kept your account in good standing, haven't you? Yes, Maggie whispered, tears beginning to form. Always. Until these strange charges appeared 2 months ago. Keanu nodded slowly, then held the papers up in front of Todd. 2 months. And not only did the fees appear suddenly, they tripled. Why? Todd opened his mouth, but no words came out. Sweat glistened on his forehead. The calm authority in Keanu's voice left him no place to hide. You see, Keanu continued, this isn't just about a mistake. This is about how you choose to treat people who depend on you. The bank employees shifted uncomfortably. Even Brittany looked down at the desk, ashamed. Maggie's heart swelled with relief. For the first time in a long time, she felt like someone saw her, not as a burden, but as a person worth defending. The silence in the bank grew heavier. Everyone was waiting for Todd's response, but his lips only trembled. His confident manager's mask was slipping. Keanu leaned slightly over the counter, his voice still calm but sharper now. You said these fees were automatic, yet here I see something else. These charges were applied again and again, but only to certain accounts. Why is that? Todd swallowed hard, his eyes darting toward Brittany as if searching for an escape. I'll need to check the system more carefully, he stammered. Keanu nodded once, but his gaze never softened. Then start checking now. We'll wait. The crowd shifted. People were no longer impatient customers. They were witnesses. Witnesses to a truth that had been hiding in plain sight. Todd sat down quickly, fingers shaking as he typed into the computer. Brittany tried to help, but her hands trembled too. The tapping of keys echoed through the silent room. Maggie clutched her coat tightly. Her heart pounded. Could this really be more than a mistake? After a long pause, Todd's voice broke the silence. It was weak, uncertain. Mr. Reeves, there seems to be a problem. Keanu tilted his head slightly. A problem. Or a pattern. Todd hesitated, then finally spoke. These charges, they weren't just applied to this lady's account. They've been applied to many others. Mostly elderly customers. Gasps filled the room. Maggie's eyes widened. Her voice quivered as she asked, So, I'm not the only one? Todd looked down, unable to meet her gaze. It looks like hundreds of accounts may be affected. The truth hung in the air like a storm about to break. Keanu shook his head slowly. His voice carried both disappointment and determination. That's not a mistake. That's a scheme. You targeted people who trusted you, who needed protection, not exploitation. Brittany stepped back, her face pale. The weight of the revelation was too heavy to deny. Customers in line whispered furiously. Some pulled out their phones, recording everything. Keanu turned to Maggie, placing the envelope gently back into her hands. You are not alone. This isn't your fault. And it's going to stop today." Then, Keanu pulled out his phone. His calm demeanor never wavered, but his actions were decisive. He pointed the camera toward Todd and Brittany. "Everyone here deserves to know the truth. And if you don't take responsibility, the world will." Todd panicked. He raised his hand slightly, his voice desperate. "Please, Mr. Reeves, don't do this. We can fix it. I'll correct her account right now." Keanu lowered the phone just a little, but his tone remained firm. "Fixing her account isn't enough. You need to make this right for every single person you've cheated, and the authorities will hear about it." The customers, once silent observers, now nodded in agreement. Some even clapped quietly, their courage growing. For Maggie, the humiliation she had felt moments earlier was replaced with something she thought she'd lost: hope. The weight of silence pressed against every wall of the bank. All eyes were locked on Todd Murphy, the manager who just moments earlier had dismissed Maggie as if she were nothing. Now his face was pale, his confidence shattered. Keanu's phone hovered in his hand, ready to record again if needed. His voice was steady, carrying both authority and compassion. "This is bigger than one account. How many people have been forced to pay these fees? How many have suffered quietly because they didn't have the strength to fight back?" Todd stammered, his throat dry. I don't know exactly. Maybe hundreds." Gasps swept through the room. Customers shook their heads in disbelief. Some looked angry, others heartbroken. Maggie finally found her voice. Her eyes glistened with tears, but her tone was steady. "So I was right. It wasn't just me." Keanu nodded gently to her, then turned back to Todd. "You're going to review every account. You're going to refund every single customer, and you're going to explain to the authorities how this happened." Todd's lips quivered. He knew there was no escape. The truth had been pulled into the light, and it wasn't going back into the shadows. Brittany, the teller, lowered her head. Her earlier smugness had vanished, replaced by shame. She whispered almost to herself, "We should have stopped it." Keanu glanced at her, his voice softer but firm. "Yes, because silence in the face of wrongdoing is just as harmful." Then, turning back to Maggie, he offered her a reassuring smile. "You deserve respect, and so does everyone who comes here. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise." The bank's customers erupted into applause, soft at first, then growing louder. For the first time, Maggie felt the weight of humiliation lift from her shoulders. She wasn't invisible anymore. She wasn't alone. Hours later, the bank released a public statement. Todd and Brittany were removed from their positions. A full audit was launched to identify all victims of the fraudulent charges. For Maggie, justice came not only in the form of her refunded money, but also compensation for the hardship she had endured. When the bank representative apologized to her personally, Maggie's eyes welled up. "Thank you," she whispered. "I only wanted to be treated fairly." Keanu stood beside her, his calm presence like a shield. He replied, "You should never have been treated this way. But now your courage has helped many others too." As Maggie left the bank, she walked a little taller. Her steps were slow, but there was dignity in them. Keanu glanced at the crowd and spoke words that would echo long after he left. "Never let anyone convince you that your worth depends on money, age, or status. Every human being deserves respect, and no one should be afraid to stand up for what is right." The customers applauded once more as Keanu gave Maggie a gentle wave goodbye and walked out of the bank. Days later, the video of the incident spread across the internet, touching millions of people. It wasn't just a story about bank fees. It became a story about justice, about courage, and about the power of standing up for those who cannot fight alone. And Maggie's story, once hidden in the quiet corners of her life, became a symbol of hope for thousands.